Okay, here's a new interesting archaeological find coming out of Alexandria, Egypt during the Ptolemaic dynasties. The skull that you see on the left while it's being excavated, you can tell this is fresh and probably the first picture that's been done of it. And you can see inside of its mouth, it has a golden tongue. It's even perforated and creased down the middle. And one wonders if it was actually encasing his tongue or if it was replacing it. For we've shown in some videos here recently of toe coverings, finger coverings, and even penis sheaths that were done in fine gold like that. There's no indication of anything like that, but yet there's a golden tongue here. It's outside of a temple to Osiris, and again during the Ptolemaic dynasties. So up in your top right hand corner you'll see a statue that looks very Greek. In fact, to me it looks a little bit like Kirk Douglas, especially if you just put a notch in his chin right there. His neck looks incredibly thick, but that's supposed to be gathering a fabric pretty much, like he's wearing a hoodie or something along that. And then there's a burial with a face mask shown here at the bottom that almost looks like a drama type face mask that one would associate with the Greeks. So let's get into this here. February 2021, mummy with golden tongue found at possible site of Cleopatra's tomb. During the recent explorations at an Egyptian temple near Alexandria, archaeologists found something startling and unique. While searching inside a newly discovered burial shaft, they found a 2,000-year-old mummy with a golden tongue. This isn't to suggest that the mummy suddenly came to life and began impressing them with its prowess of oratory persuasions. It means that the mummy had an actual golden tongue, a replica made from precisely shaped golden foil. This glittering discovery was made by a joint team of archaeologists from the Dominican Republic and Egypt, headed by trailblazing archaeologist Kathleen Martinez. Why do they say trailblazing? Well, she's from the Dominican Republic and one of the first groups, or the first group, I believe, of Latin American archaeologists that are working in Egypt now. Golden Tongue at Taposiris Magna. The excavations took place at a location known as Taposiris Magna, a small ancient community that was founded in 280 BC by Ptolemy II, one of the Ptolemaic descendants of Alexander the Great, who ruled Egypt as a Hellenistic state for nearly 300 years following its fall to Alexander in the 4th century BC. The temple at Taposiris Magna that contained the mummy was dedicated to Osiris, the ancient Egyptian lord of the underworld and rebirth, who was worshipped by Greek leaders in Egypt who honored the traditions. And also they add Seriapis and so on that comes out of this, and then through the Greeks and so on. But it isn't known for sure why the mummy was given a golden tongue. Its discoverers theorized that the tongue was attached so that the deceased individual could communicate verbally with Osiris in the afterworld. Well, you may have, associated with this temple that's here, he may have been a temple worker or something, or somebody that had a golden tongue. We've used that expression to this day, so could go along with it. She says this is entirely speculative, however, since there are no written records that can identify the individual or prove that he might have had anything to say that an ancient Egyptian god would want to hear. Now, that's kind of a derogatory comment, I guess, but sure, he might. And one wonders why the people that mummified him would give him this golden tongue at this Temple of Osiris thing, so it probably does have something to do with it. There's a few other articles here recently where excitement builds around finding tombs of Alexandria and Cleopatra, searching for that lost tomb. The fake news that sealed the fate of Anthony and Cleopatra, and how they've looked for it so many times, and people have said maybe it was on Alexandria that shifted off into the Gulf now and it's kind of underwater now, or maybe it's been picked through long, long ago. And no one's really quite sure where it is. It's hard to get permits though, and things like that, and you really don't want them, people crawling all over like ants, just digging the whole place up necessarily, if you know what I mean. Here's some of the statuary that's found from there, and some of it looks alabaster, some of it looks to where it's maybe a terracotta type, or maybe it's just stained with red ochre. You look at the one in the top left and you can tell that her chest piece was done in red, and perhaps even her hair, yet the other seems somewhat lighter. A lot of these statues, as we indicated earlier in a few videos last year, they were painted in ancient times, and so why it looks like they have these hollow eyes, quite often their eyes were drawn in. In fact, they found this effect whenever they took a UV light and ran it across them and realized that it still had a glowing effect off of the Egyptian blue that they had used, which has a photophosphorescent effect, kind of like black lights used to do to posters and all that stuff. And of course, there were a lot of Egyptians who had this same coloration on their statues that had long faded away. A stunning bounty of Alexandrian artifacts were found, though. The mummy with golden tongue was highly unusual, but it's only one of the fascinating relics that have been found in 16 new burial shafts recently discovered by Kathleen Martinez and Dominican Egyptian team. One of the more remarkable finds was a female mummy that was enclosed in a full-body death mask. And we saw that in the bottom right-hand corner there. Death masks are something, well, you can't say it's necessarily unique to these people. We found death masks in many cultures, but death masks even in this area go back an incredibly long amount of time. In fact, I believe I have one prompted up where they found another Canaanite type burial, and in it are a bunch of the mummies that are done with the plastered faces that look pretty much very similar to this, but those they used shells from the Gulf to fake their eyes out. In this, it looks more like a mask, but it also had a decoration going up around it, which you can see that's kind of cracked away, and this was thin. I don't know what material this is, perhaps terracotta or something, but it looks to be a well workmanship type mask. You can tell it's supposed to be a female here that's with this. And one wonders if it had inset eyes, if they had fallen back in there, if something had happened along that nature. But as far as Egyptians and pharaohs maybe having a full headgear head mask that goes onto it, real familiar. So the fact that they mocked it with this lady that's here, and I don't know if this burial is exactly associated even with the same tomb. It doesn't make that indication in the article, and I'm waiting for a better article to come out about it, but this just came out then, or this February, and I thought I would go ahead and indicate it and maybe give a preemptive heads up, because apparently there's some more archaeology coming from here. You can tell that this has been done as a female, but she's got this full mask and the mummy that's enclosed here inside of it. But you know, King Tut's mask is one of the most famous Egyptian artifacts, if not artifacts, that have ever been found, and so it looks very similar to that and done on a female. And then there's a man with a golden tongue that seems somewhat conspicuous, although they seem to have instantly brushed it off, like, don't know if he'd have anything to say. Well, I'm sure that he would. In fact, I bet he would know Egyptian tongue at that time, which at that time would still be correct. The archaeologists also found the remains of two other entombed mummies, one of which was covered in plastered layers, covered or decorated with golden images of Osiris. Wish we could see that. Partially intact scrolls were found next to these mummies, and the archaeologists have now begun the long, laborious process of decoding the scrolls to see what secrets they might reveal. So I'm guessing that in the initial opening and look and screening at the scrolls, they realized that it's not just a, Book of the Dead as we know it, or a scroll for as such. It might be other types of scrolls. I don't know, but they don't indicate that they are in pieces or so on, but it is a laborious process to sit and try to peel one of these things back open and get it into its original shape without destroying it. Additionally, several well-plastered statues were also discovered, and these are believed to represent some of the important individuals that are buried in the Taposiris Magna temple. So they're actually buried in the temple. Other treasures discovered in the burial shafts along the mummies include 8 marble masks and 8 golden flakes that were once part of a golden wreath. So like little leaves that all make up a wreath. And there's part of them there. I wonder if this looks like it'd been looted. And they only find these certain mummies with all these other ones. So part of it had been looted in ancient times, and this is all that's left. It's impossible to date these relics to a particular year, but they were almost assuredly buried sometime during the era of the Greek rule, which lasted from 305 to 30 BC. Well, it could be either way, but discerning this is all the Greek statuary that goes into it and the look of it and the sallow head to the side and so on, I would believe so. Hey, he's got that Kirk Douglas chin thing. If you just put that on the other statue, hey, I wonder if that's Kirk's kid. Looks like Bobby, a friend of mine's younger brother as we were growing up, but he filled out quite a bit whenever he got older. In Search of Cleopatra, Kathleen Martinez story. Originally trained as a lawyer and still practicing part-time as such, Kathleen Martinez came to Egypt to begin her explorations in 2002. Shortly after earning her master's degree in archaeology, she first became interested in archaeology in ancient Egypt at the age of 15 when she became deeply obsessed with the life and times of legendary Cleopatra and the last pharaoh of Egypt and close friend of Mark Anthony and Julius Caesar, as has been immortalized repeatedly in Hollywood movies since the beginning of the film industry. Well, yeah, it's kind of a well-known thing, and one of the eras of Egypt that we know quite a bit about, and Mark Anthony, pray tell, how are things in Rome? Everyone's seen these type of depictions. And of course, she was Greek and comes from that same lineage. When Martinez first arrived in Egypt, she came of her own initiative and not with the support of any institution. She came to search for the location of Cleopatra's lost burial place, which she believes will be found not inside a tomb, but in this burial shafts in a temple dedicated to Osiris and or Isis, who are perhaps the most well-known in all of ancient Egyptian gods. It is known that Cleopatra and Mark Anthony felt an affinity to these figures from Egyptian mythology, and Martinez was certain that if she just found the right temple, she'd find the mummies of Cleopatra and her consort somewhere inside. So she would believe that she would find something that was dedicated to Osiris and Isis, and if that would be it, surely that would be where she would be buried at because of her own self-association along with Mark Anthony. In her initial visit to Egypt, Martinez managed to secure an appointment to see Egyptian Minister of Antiquities back then, the celebrated Egyptologist Dr. Zahi Hawass. Against all odds, Martinez wrangled a 2-month permit to explore several temples that were normally not open to independent researchers. Despite having a short time to look, Martinez made a discovery that was destined to change her life. Dr. Zahi Hawass is no longer the one that appoints people, I don't think, though, but this was back in 2002. In archaeology, 2 months is nothing, she said in a 2016 interview with New York City-based news agency DNA Info. But I took what they gave me, and the last day of those 2 months I made a big discovery that changed the architecture of Egyptian temples. I found 2 previously hidden chambers in the temple of Taposiris, Magna, where the tomb of Cleopatra and Mark Anthony could be. And one would think that it wouldn't necessarily be so hidden that if you would get it at this point that you could say like, well, here's this thing, but it also could have, been covered up with a shaft in a way so people would never disturb it after what had happened to all the other tombs that had all been disturbed from before. This is the north facade of the Osiris Temple ruin in Taposiris Magna, west of Alexandria, and it's facing the sea. Returning home to the Dominican Republic, Martinez convinced individuals at the University of Santo Domingo to sponsor further archaeological work at Taposiris Magna. In 2005, Martinez and her team became the first archaeologist from Latin America to gain permission to carry out excavations on Egyptian soil. So here's another find that they found here with, it looks like 4, I'm going to say they're even smaller mummies here that are all grouped up together. And even though the start button is covering it, it looks like the coverings on them go all the way across to where they might have died all together in some way, and that covering covers them all at once. Will Cleopatra's grave ever be found? Stay tuned. It remains to be seen if Martinez will ever find the burial place of Cleopatra. While academics don't dismiss the possibility that she and Mark Anthony might be interred at the temple of Taposiris Magna here, there's no actual evidence that suggests that she is. Many archaeologists and Egyptologists are highly skeptical of Martinez's theory, including Dr. Zayawas. Well, that's probably why he gave her the deal anyhow, but he probably didn't know that these new shafts would be found and everything that go along with it, which can lead a whole different way. Sometimes that's how things are found. They just have no idea what's up under these things. And what's up under this little mound over here and this mound over here, sometimes dating way back. Far, far older than this that we've discussed recently. Going back to something like Göbekli Tepe, which was just this mound over here. It was the little pot-bellied hill over here. There's no disputing the enormity of Martinez's accomplishments in the nearly 2 decades, or 20 years, she has spent exploring the Taposiris Magna site. Man, wish the coffee would kick in. She and her team have discovered hundreds of artifacts since their excavations began in 2005, including a bust of Cleopatra and several ancient coins from her time bearing her image. They also discovered evidence proving that the temple foundation had been constructed under the authority of Ptolemy IV, who ruled Egypt from 221 BC to 204 BC. So, As the discovery of 16 new burial shafts during the most recent exploration she's just had season demonstrates, the temple at Taposiris Magna is a gift that keeps on giving. Perhaps one day Taposiris Magna will deliver the ultimate prize to Kathleen Martinez and reveal itself as the actual burial site of Cleopatra. If that happens, it would represent the perfect capstone to the career of a true pioneer in her field. Well, kudos to her. I'm going to have to check that out here after the video and see what that is and what connections it has. So you saw the temple that they're looking at here, but all these archaeological finds. Normally I spend most of my time trying to look at something that predates this. But the interesting connections that you have with burial masks and so on, and how they kept this tradition going of Egyptology, or Egyptianness actually back then, and all of these cool finds that they find here. I wonder what's going to come out from it in the near future, for it seems like she's been there for a long time, at 20 years at going at it, and they've allowed her to do such. She's found a few shafts and this, that, and the other, and next thing you know, here's another group of 16 more shafts, and I'm guessing here with just the initial look at it, they found more statuary and a conspicuous man with a golden tongue. Like, share, and subscribe, and we'll get on to the next one. Let me know what you think downstairs. Peace.